The FNAF 3 movie is still being written, and I feel like talking about my predictions. FNAF 2 was unfortunately lackluster and had no third act, so I'm going to give you all my crackpot theories on the printed page, as well as my rough outline of what will happen in the movie. First, to clarify, I'll be referring to this guy as Mike and this guy as Michael. Mike Schmidt is the main character who's trying to save his sister's life in both movies, and Michael Afton is the son of William Afton, the guy that killed a bunch of children in the 80s. Starting with what the hell they're gonna do with Circus Baby. I think there's one of two possibilities, and one of them makes zero sense, and it's an even worse reveal than two Mikes. I think that Elizabeth might be revealed as the secret first Afton child that was scooped by the baby animatronic, as we see that baby already has green eyes, which she only gains after Elizabeth possesses her. This would explain why the pictures of the Afton family only included Michael and Vanessa, because by the time the pictures were taken, Elizabeth was long dead. My other Elizabeth-esque theory is that we're doing a Fourth Closet Volume 2, and that Vanessa is a robot recreation of either Elizabeth or a human Vanessa that died very young, like how Elizabeth died in the movie, and also like how Charlotte functions in the original FNAF novels. This would explain why there's a Circus Baby animatronic as early as the early 1980s. Both would give a link to Vanessa and Baby, which seem to be somewhat implied by that nightmare. Since Vanessa is dreaming about Circus Baby being in her attic and is horrified by her, which she isn't by any other animatronic in its default state. So I'm expecting some kind of lore reveal about her, in either FNAF 3 or a later movie. I am aware that Vanessa being a robot would be beyond stupid, and I wouldn't like it either, due to her being stabbed and in hospital, as well as her being able to actually use dream theory to get William out of her head, when surely whatever AI or artificial brain she would use as a robot couldn't work the same as a human brain. I also find it unlikely that, assuming she wasn't lying, being a police officer, nobody finds out, including her, since they would need to know your blood type and she would likely be going through metal detectors very commonly, although maybe they weren't as ubiquitous in 2000. On to Michael Afton. I see one of two paths they could go with Michael, assuming that he'll continue to even be a character, and one obvious path if they decide to kill him off. If he gets cured of his will fatuation, then I assume he goes on his own little side thing to try and bring peace to all the people William killed, because I don't think it's just the MCI plus Charlotte and Garrett in this universe. This would be similar to what he does in Sister Location and FNAF 6, putting Elizabeth back together and working with Henry to release all the remaining spirits. If he stays evil, then I think he either dies protecting Springtrap or at the hands of Springtrap, to illustrate that William is no longer in control, and agony has taken over and transformed him into a literal monster. I did lie to you though. There's one more stupid decision that could be made with Michael. Michael is Garrett. We never got confirmation that Garrett died, besides his toy plane being given to Vanessa, and him never being found. Would it not be incredibly odd for William to randomly kidnap and kill a kid multiple states away from his home, and it's seemingly the only time he does this because he already has a signature method as of 1982, using a spring Bonnie suit to blend in and take a kid backstage before killing them? Given that we only know of 7 confirmed murders, it seems to me that William may have been kidnapping him through a different method, and for different purposes, such as having someone to continue his legacy. Michael is obsessed with the idea of being property of William, almost certainly due to years of abuse, and being made to feel worthless until he aligns with William's beliefs that he owns and controls his children. Something odd is that Michael seemingly doesn't understand his father's actual goals, which as far as we can tell are just to have control over people. He killed children and they possessed the animatronics, at which point he figured out a way to control them through drawings, and decided to make them kill random security guards and love him like a father. This William clearly wants adoration, and literally kills to get it, and he also clearly cares about his kids to some extent, just like in the games. You can see a crestfallen and regretful look on his face after stabbing Vanessa, because he by no means wants her dead. This does not make William a sympathetic character, like some people will claim I'm saying. Him caring about them does not make him at all justified in the movies or the games, and I want to make that clear. I always found it weird that William recognized the name Mike Schmidt. Sure, it's not unlikely for him to track what the public knows about the kidnapping just in case he left some evidence behind, but it's weird that he knew the name of Garrett's brother and assumed that this Mike Schmidt was the same one. It seems to me that Garrett may have told William about Mike on their drive, and that may be where the name Michael came from when he wanted to turn Garrett into his own son. There's a pretty gaping hole in this idea though.
First I killed your brother, now I kill you. Symmetry, my friend.
Yeah, that really takes a spring out of my step, huh? William could, of course, be lying in this moment, but I'm not going to lie to you, that would be dumb. I don't think that Henry died in that end credit scene, like some people think. And not just because Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich are confirmed to be in the third movie, but because we only vaguely hear him being attacked, and having no Henry in the third movie would be the biggest misstep in the entire trilogy, in my opinion. Henry brought us the first hype and aura moment in the series, just to be killed off through an audio recording at the end of the credits? I don't think so. So I think Henry will be joining Mike and Abby to get Charlotte out of Vanessa and free her soul, like the MCI children apparently were freed, on a whim. Since Scott probably wrote them out because they were getting too old, I can see Charlotte keeping to the same schedule, being around for just 2 movies before being happiest stayed. William will escape. I don't think William's dying in this movie, because I don't think it'll be the last movie, and Scott has expressed interest in a sister location movie, as well as decided to include Circus Baby in the second movie. A sister location movie without the continuous threat of William would be weird to me, and may be bettered by having a similar structure to the games, with FNAF 3 being the first face-off between Mike and Springtrap, having sister location happen and reveal a bunch of lore about Afton Robotics, Elizabeth/Vanessa and the Funtime animatronics debut, and then having a 5th, final movie which finally puts it all to rest, with William, Henry and the rest of the spirits and memories being put to rest, potentially including the death of Michael and Vanessa for one of Scott's signature bittersweet endings. Garrett reveal. Garrett will be revealed as whatever he is, whether it's Michael, Golden Freddy Kid, or another character like Balloon Boy. Since the MCI have apparently passed on, I'm not sure if Garrett is actually a part of them, since they surely would have revealed it at the end of the last movie when they passed on, so that Mike and Garrett could have a final goodbye. So who could he be besides Golden Freddy Kid? Well, something similar to the Golden Duo theory could be happening in the movie. Golden Duo refers to the theory that the Golden Freddy animatronic has 2 spirits inside of it, which is why it acts so strangely and has the power to teleport around, because the conflicting actions of the spirits makes it less physical and more spectral, which also explains why its appearance seems to conform to the animatronics around it in each game. So if something akin to Golden Duo is true in the movies, it could explain why the Golden Freddy Kid wasn't Garrett, and Garrett could have stayed behind to haunt William, similar to Ultimate Custom Night. What does make this less likely is that we see the blonde Golden Freddy Kid death-staring William at the end of the first movie, as if he is the one you should not have killed, which is especially likely because the actor is very similar to the image of Toy Shink, and is the only MCI actor they brought back in FNAF 2. My third thought is that Garrett is nobody important, besides just being Mike's brother. He didn't possess anything and is just buried in a random field. I don't find this likely because Vanessa finds his toy plane among a few other things in the box in her childhood home, being his plane, marbles, a mirror, and a journal. Since it's one of 4 items, it makes me think of other things that are in sets of 4, such as the band of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, and we get a similar band to that in sister location. The Phantoms. I think the Phantoms have a good chance of making it into the movie. If some kind of spirit is attached to or emitted by William in the Springtrap suit, it reasons that the Fazbear's Fright location he ends up in will become haunted like in the games. It's also possible they'll come up with another way to feature them, such as hallucinations or some kind of gas leak. But overall, I think they wouldn't represent FNAF 3 in a movie without featuring some Phantom cameos. I think Vanessa will be controlled by Charlie for the majority of the movie, which is the only reason Mike, Abby, and Jeremiah walk away at the end of the movie, forgetting that the puppet is just in Abby's bedroom. It also seems like they left the music box that pacifies Charlie, which he will probably destroy at the start of the next movie to set the stakes high. By the end of the movie, or shortly before a final standoff for Springtrap, they'll get the puppet to leave Vanessa and potentially calm her down permanently. But I don't think that Vanessa will survive, if they're sticking with her being a human and not an animatronic. Seeing Vanessa die will turn Michael against William, and he'll align more of his characterization in the games, wanting to end William's reign of terror and put everything to rest. Now here's my general plot outline for how I think it'll go, assuming that there'll be some padding to extend it to movie length, but this is how I more or less think it will go. The movie opens with one of 2 things: a direct continuation of Vanessa being possessed and destroying the box, or Mike receiving the message from Henry that was in the end credit scene, and going to save him from the puppet. Henry survives the encounter, either through Mike saving him or escaping himself, and they get to some kind of safe house where they have a very lore-dumpy conversation restating Henry's relationship to William, and saying they need to find a way to get Charlie out of Vanessa and calm her permanently. There's also a throwaway line about Abby not being in school because the school is closed down after Mr. Berg's death. At this point there's a time skip, past the end credit scene in FNAF 2, so Fazbear's Fright can be up and running and Springtrap has been moved. Fazbear's Fright is basically the same as in the game, a grimy and very green horror attraction based on the legend of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, which fits more in this universe, as Mike's Aunt Jane already rekindled a lot of interest in the legend. We get a scene with the security guard that shows a very nostalgic recreation of the FNAF 3 office with the big window and old equipment to fit the setting of the attraction, being early 80s. This nobody guard that could be a cameo of Dorko or Markiplier or someone else gets killed in a very violent way that's obscured in shadow or through the fog on the window, so it can remain a PG movie. After this, there's a help wanted ad in the newspaper, and we get 2 shots that cut between each other, with Mike seeing it and grimacing, contrasted with Michael reading it and grinning. Michael actually applies for the job and gets it, and when he sees Springtrap on the camera, he becomes overjoyed, grinning wider than we ever saw before, as he attempts to talk to William. But William isn't himself anymore. He's become more of a wild beast, with the agony of his death combined with the programming in the Spring Bonnie suit causing him to attack Michael, who retreats to the office, which is where we get our scene showing actual FNAF 3 gameplay. Michael controls the speakers throughout the attraction, which causes Springtrap to go to the room it's played from. We see Michael looking extremely stressed and scared, and it cuts, leaving his survival as a cliffhanger. We see Mike, Abby and Henry planning what to do next, as they are sure that if Charlie's going to show up anywhere, it'll be at Fazbear's Fright. The 3 of them turn up on opening day of Fazbear's Fright and pay for admission. They briefly speak with the owner, who comes across as very dejected and cold, easily the kind of person that cares little for human life in this universe, and the kind to just clean up and hide a corpse, which is our explanation for how the security guards keep dying. They walk through and Abby silently mourns the loss of the MCI. It's clearly still having an effect on her. They come into a very familiar suit, Springtrap. There's a large plaque on the wall next to where he's slumped over, describing the Springlock suits and naming him a Spring Bonnie, as well as mentioning a rumour that a company policy was to go to the back room to bleed out if the Springlocks were to fail, so you don't ruin the magic for the children. It also gives him the nickname Springtrap. Mike finally realizes that this is what the Golden Freddy kid meant when he said he's coming back stronger, and that William is, to some extent, still alive or conscious in there. He might see a little twitch in his hand. They decide that there's nothing they can do here for now. They can't exactly just cut his head off and walk out of there, so they decide to come back that night. Back to Michael in the office defending. He sees Mike, Abby and Henry on an outside camera and gets a dastardly idea. He opens the door for them and doesn't warn them that William is moving. They get caught off guard with Springtrap moving and get chased around the attraction like it's Scooby-Doo. Henry tries to talk and reason with him, asking him to think about all the years they put into building Freddy's and making Springtrap pause for just a second, as if the William part of him was touched for but a moment, before he continues to approach them. The puppet suddenly appears, still possessing Vanessa, and begins to beat the shit out of Springtrap, knocking him over and giving them the opportunity to get out of there. Mike, Henry and Michael all file out of the building, and Michael cackles to himself, and gives another long speech about how he's so much more powerful now, and that together they will kill everybody in the town, just like he wanted in the second movie. In a shocking twist, the puppet rips the Springtrap head off, and it flies through the still open back door as we see the rotting head of William Afton, mouth splitting open like an alligator and screaming. Henry pulls out a box of matches and lights the entire box on fire, tears welling in his eyes. He tosses it inside and watches how it bursts into flames and quickly spreads through the heavily insulated and badly ventilated attraction. We hear a shrill scream coming from the puppet and a deep and guttural, painful yell from William. The puppet squirms out of Vanessa and flies out of the building, scorched. Mike immediately attempts to enter the building to save her and fights through the smoke filling every corner of the attraction. He finally manages to get to her, passed out, and holds her up by the shoulder and manages to carry her out. Henry approaches Charlotte and speaks from his heart to her, apologizing profusely for not being there when she needed him most and allowing her to die like that. The tear marks on the puppet go away, and the spirit of Charlie appears, looking calm, and one tear rolling down her cheek. She hugs her father. We pan out of the scene with Fazbear's Fright falling apart from the fire, and a final scream from William, cutting to a newspaper dropping onto a pavement, looking very similar to the paper from FNAF 3. It says that the local attraction burned down due to faulty wiring, and we see Mike and Abby looking happy. Mike is making pancakes, and they're having a fun, light-hearted conversation when the phone rings. Vanessa's woken up in the hospital, and thanks them both for saving her. We zoom into the same newspaper, now on the kitchen table. to a specific line that there are reports of a strange figure that was spotted leaving after the fire was put out, described as something of a giant dark green figure that looked to have an exposed human skull. Cut to black. To be clear, this is not necessarily my hope for what the movie will be, and I'm also not a screenwriter. But it is how I think they could best utilise the nostalgia for the FNAF 3 location, as well as the already set up characters like Michael and Charlie. I think Michael will escape again, like a Batman villain, and he'll have his own big villain movie in the 4th one, whatever it's called. That's about it for this video. Let me know what your predictions are, pretty please. See ya.